Hi, everyone. Welcome to Access Chat. We have Antonio and myself here today, and Neil is not able to join us, but he is missed. We are excited to be speaking to Regina today, who is joining us from a very dark Norway, right?
Helsinki.
Yes. Thank you. I changed your country. Sorry about that. But Regina, will you, and also thank you for the light so that we can see your face. I know so we appreciate that. But I'm excited about the conversation today because I myself am a neurodivergent woman. And so we're looking forward to the conversation. But Regina, let me turn it over to you so that you can properly introduce yourself to the audience.
Thank you so much, Deborah and Antonio. Thank you for inviting me. So my name is Regina Casteleijn-Osorno. I'm fourth year in my final year of my doctoral studies here at the University of Turku. And my topic has been on women who are entrepreneurs and caregivers to special needs children. And during the last 4 years, the study has changed slightly because out of the 9 women that have started, we ended up finding out that over half of them are actually neurodivergent. And during this process, I also found out that I was neurodivergent, although I already knew this, but I got my official diagnosis. And in doing that, it has opened these new doors for research and collaboration. And then now the study that I'm working on now, which is looking at neurodivergent entrepreneurial women who were late diagnosed. And by late diagnosed, we are using the cutoff as over 18. And most of the women in our study now were diagnosed over 30, but we do have one that was diagnosed at just over 18. So we thought we really want to include her in there also, but definitely not diagnosed in childhood, let's say.
Right. So when I was diagnosed in my mid 50s, that would probably count.
Absolutely. We're going to need you.
Right.
So, and Deborah, why is this diagnosis happening so late? Is there a story behind it? Why?
Deborah, do you want to take that?
I will just take it and then I'll turn it over to Regina, who's an expert in this. But it happened because we were not diagnosing girls back then. I mean, girls were, I don't know, we were looking at it in boys, but we were not looking at it in girls. We did not start looking at the possibility that women were neurodivergent or girls were neurodivergent for at least probably good 20 years after I was in school. I know this is a surprise to you, Antonio. I was sometimes disruptive in my classroom. They seemed to think I talked too much, I laughed too much, but most of the boys were worse than me, right? So they just looked at the boys and they didn't really consider women. And I know, Regina, you're learning a lot more because we're all figuring this out. But that's one reason why I wasn't not diagnosed, but it's interesting. I've got 9 siblings, that's a whole nother story. We recently founded a few. Anyway, that's a whole nother story too.
Oh, wow.
But of the girls that I grew up with, my siblings, every one of us have been late diagnosed with ADHD. So I appreciate your study, Regina.
Yeah. And just echoing what you said, Antonio, it's very, very common that women or girls are, especially adolescent girls, are more likely to be diagnosed with depression or anxiety. And they don't think of it as it being any kind of neurodivergent trait, whether it's autism or ADHD or anything else. So I think that's it. There's a lot of misdiagnosis, and it's not, for a lot of women, it's not until they actually hit perimenopause, menopause, where they start actually thinking that it's not perimenopause or menopause. I have friends who have been diagnosed bipolar. They've been taking antidepressant medication for the last 25 years. Then they hit menopause. The medication, the hormones for menopause are not helping. And then they start going in further into their own research and they start thinking, well, maybe I actually am neurodivergent. Maybe there's something else going on here, not just perimenopause. Maybe I'm not, losing my mind or however we want to say it. So then they dive deeper into this. And also I have to say, at least here in Finland, it's very difficult to get diagnosed as a woman at a over age. I was diagnosed over 40, 45, and it is very difficult. I started the process, and halfway through the process, I ran out of assessments from what was allowed from my work, and I had to get the approval of the head doctor to continue with the assessments. And he said, no, she doesn't need a diagnosis. So I had to fight that, even though I had half of the diagnosis already done. I had to have the assessment done, let's say, because he didn't feel that it was relevant to my life, that I needed to have it. And that's what we're fighting against. And this is not just me, this is other women as well. I have a friend who's almost 90% done through her autism diagnosis process, and she won't be able to get a full diagnosis because the doctor doesn't feel that she, quote unquote, needs it. And this is a struggle because, not having the diagnosis really invalidates your experiences. and it invalidates all the struggles we go through. So there is validation with the diagnosis, even though it might not seem necessary for some people. It validates what we've already been experiencing our whole life.
I also think that we're probably in the United States. Some people feel we're overdiagnosing people. So I
Mhm.
imagine in different countries it's handled different ways. Also, my own experience, and I don't know if this is true across the board, but I actually have multiple diagnoses.
Mhm.
For the longest time, I just thought I didn't understand why everybody else could do their left from their right but me. And that's called directional. Oh gosh, dyslexia. Sorry, I'm like
Okay. No,
blanking on it.
I don't know that one.
Right, right. But it was like when I learned about it, I was like, oh, yay. So my brain is just different the way it works.
Yeah.
And I have done all these things to help, but also know you're looking at it from the lens of entrepreneurs. And so
Mm.
I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a late diagnosed. I have a beautiful, wonderful daughter with Down syndrome. My husband had dementia. And I imagine with some of my life, I'm not that uncommon from a lot. I imagine
Mm.
you're going to find a lot of neurodivergent entrepreneurs. Just my opinion.
Yeah. There's increase in studies about this, that entrepreneurship and neurodivergence is going hand in hand. So we've been doing a lot of research on well-being studies and entrepreneurship in the last few years, but what's coming out more and more is that actually these traits like ADHD and there's an excellent scholar based in Syracuse University, Johan Wiklund. He just released another paper on ADHD and entrepreneurship. He's fantastic. He himself has ADHD. He has a child with ADHD. He's a senior scholar in Syracuse, and he's really paving the way for this type of research to get out there. And I think that we just need to speak more about it because it's not anything that's been hidden. It's just something that hasn't been discussed. And Deborah, you and I, we talked years ago when I just started my PhD. And I remember at that point, I was still met with quite a bit of resistance about why do I need to study women with special needs children? Why is that necessary? And now in the last 4 years, I've been presenting my work all over the world. And I've been able to speak about my research in different universities and different conferences. And now I can see the relevance because people are interested in neurodiversity now. And suddenly this is kind of an interesting topic. And yeah, okay, maybe we're going to start looking at it a bit more. And it's only been 4 years since I've been starting the study. So it's interesting how tides have changed.
Antonio, did you want to come in? Okay, cool. And I wonder, I would say this: you're interesting timing when you're saying 4 years, and I'm thinking of timing here in the United States. So it's been a
Mm,
long few years for some of us. But I wonder, as we attack DEI, disability, equity, inclusion, and
mhm,
belonging, if that isn't part of the reason why people are saying, well, wait a minute, you might be talking about me and my family. I don't
mm.
know if that's true. Do you have any idea, Regina, why, or any ideas of why society seems to be caring about this now?
I'm not sure why there's a shift in it. I think it's just because times change and people are more vocal about what they need. I would say for myself, a few years ago, I worked in an open office and it was really hard for me to work in an open office. There were a lot of voices, a lot of noises, a lot of smells. And I just found myself struggling through it every day and I never did anything about it. I didn't want to make trouble. I didn't want to, complain. I didn't want to lose my job. That's always something that is a stressor here in Finland as a foreigner working. You don't want to make any waves. But I got to a point now in the last year where I just couldn't take it anymore. I stopped going into the office. I started working from home more. And I realized that this is really, something that has to do with my disability more than anything. So I reached out to the small EDI department. We had two people working there. And I mentioned to them, is there maybe a quieter space I can work where there's not people, walking around and eating and all the cologne and all these things? And they said, yeah, we'll find you a small space to work. And I have a great little space now. But I think it's just having that courage to talk about it. And they said, oh, we didn't know you had any disability. And I said, well, that's true because I never mentioned it. I just kind of suffered in silence. And, you'd hear comments and, that, oh, you've complained a little bit too much about this area. And, but I just couldn't help it. I couldn't be there. So maybe just bravery, I guess, over time.
I agree. I agree. And that's one reason why we're working on Billion Strong, because
Yeah.
we should be able to come out and own our true entire lived experiences. And can we even maybe be proud of it? I mean, can we be proud of who we are and the way our beautiful brains work? It is a very interesting topic, though, because we also I've seen at couple of conferences where people were talking about pulling neurodivergence out of disability. And I remember thinking, let's not do that right now. Let's stick together. Let's make sure we're included. Let's focus on what we're trying to achieve here, which is really any human being should be meaningfully included in society. That's what we're doing here, by the way. We happen to be doing it from the lens of talking about people with lived experiences with disabilities, but why is society excluding any person for any reason, including other reasons we exclude people? We exclude them because they love the wrong people, they love the wrong sex, or just ridiculousness, the color of their skin, where they're just ridiculousness. When I think every single human is a beautiful, fragile, entity that we should honor. Your work really spoke to me, though. When you're looking at it from the lens of entrepreneurs, and I know we've discussed it a little, but why was that important for you? And can you also tell us a little about the other researcher that you're working with?
Yeah. Well, she and I are both are in the entrepreneurship program at our universities. So that's the main reason why we have to, in principle, we have to ground all our research in entrepreneurship research. That's where she was getting her funding from. So we followed the idea that we would go a little bit into both of our directions. So I do well-being of mothers with special needs children and stigma and looking at resilience and stigma together. She did her PhD. She already graduated in June. She did it on gender and gendered pitching. And she did a great job. She graduated with honors, and she's focusing on women and how women have to change the way they pitch and how they demonstrate pitching, and how they do gender with pitching. So it's really interesting. So when we saw this call for the paper in this special issue about neurodivergent entrepreneurs, it just made sense. We just thought, you know what, let's go for it. Let's put our strengths together. And she was wondering, do you think we're going to find enough? And she's not familiar with neurodivergent entrepreneurs at all. So that was our biggest fear, is that we wouldn't have enough women for our study. And we do have quite a few. We still need a few more. We're using photo voice and IPA analysis, which is interpretive phenomenological analysis. And this is looking at the lived experiences of the people. So we are using this participatory approach, they call it, where you are actually co-constructing meaning with us. And that's done through the photos. And in order to reach enough of the lived experiences, we're not talking about, statistical saturation or anything like that, because that's not what you want when we're talking about humans. I think I still stand strongly behind that. We want to really learn the deep realities and nuanced realities of people. We're aiming for 10 women in our study. And this way we will meet one time to have just a general discussion about entrepreneurship and neurodivergence and how it has affected your life. And then we'll give you the photo voice task. And then we meet again to go through your photos. And that's basically all we're asking. It's not a huge amount of time even that we're looking for.
I know that I've seen numbers, but I want to be honest, I have not taken the time to see if those numbers were grounded in good research. Just to be fair, but I've seen numbers as high as 60, 70% in the United States that entrepreneurs are neurodiverse. ADHD was the one that came out the most, but I've seen studies that talk a lot about how many people that are entrepreneurs are neurodivergent. And also we've talked about, I've seen studies, which I agree with, of why did I choose to become an entrepreneur? I personally did not choose to do it because I wasn't figuring out how to get along in corporations, which I was working at the time. But I always did feel like I just seemed a little different from everybody else, a little bit more wound tighter. Like maybe you don't need the coffee, Deborah, but when I started seeing some of the ADHD studies and articles that were coming out about how many entrepreneurs were neurodiverse, I just thought that was interesting and encouraging at the same time.
It definitely is, yeah. And I think that there's no one reason for it. Some of the women in the study, they've worked for, 30 years in different organizations in high positions as well, because, people with ADHD, we're talking about ADHD now, they're able to succeed and focus on tasks that other people might not find that interesting. They're able to really set things in motion. And one or two of the women in the study now, they have worked in extremely high positions and just decided over the last few years that they were tired of not being able to make their own decisions. And they've gone into things like coaching and consulting. And also for neurodivergent women, especially, they've gone into this type of field. And I think that has something to do with it. For me, I was an entrepreneur for 4 years. I had my own cupcake business when my children were small. And I felt like it was the happiest I'd ever been. I was able to work in times that I felt fit around my family life. And I was able to do something that really brought me joy. And that's something that's really important. You might not find the joy in work as an ADHD or neurodivergent person. You might not enjoy the work you've been given, or even your colleagues or the work environment, or a number of other things. I know that for me, when I worked in corporate life, that I found that the profound sense of justice was really difficult for me to see injustices in the workplace, whether this was injustices with pay discrepancies within my team or within working hours or how certain people were just being treated in general. I kept speaking up and I kept being asked to stop speaking up. And that made things really difficult for me. I had a lot of stress and anxiety thinking I can't go back to a company that's asking me to, you know, turn my back when somebody I know is getting treated badly. And I think a lot of ADHD people have this intense sense of justice, and
I do.
it's really tough. It's tough when you have to be told to stop doing that. I can't.
Stop protecting people.
Stop
Ooh,
doing that. It's not
I
nice.
don't think I could do
Let
that.
let us
No,
mistreat them. You must let us mistreat people. Stop it.
we talked about the difficulties in having a diagnosis on and but that we see all over the media sometimes, even on the entrepreneur narrative, a kind of okay, no, this person very successful claims to be neurodivergent, but we know that the lives of most people is not as easy and not comes from that privilege. How do you see we, when we talk about neurodiversity, keep a balance and keeps the reality grounded and don't create this kind of, don't romanticize this. I have this condition. Maybe I can aspire to be a very successful person. How we keep things on the ground?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that I don't know anybody in at least that I've studied that romanticizes this. I think that it's a real struggle. And because I'm working with women who have struggled with this most of their adult life, I think that it's mainly a sense of relief that they can
Yeah.
sometimes feel safe to reveal this. Not even the women in our study, not all of them talk about being neurodivergent. They may work with neurodivergent people, but they might not lead with that when they're presenting or pitching. So I think there's still some kind of stigma behind it. I don't know if that answered the question.
Deborah,
Yeah.
you want
No,
to comment?
well, I remember when I first started. Once again, I'm in my late 60s, and I remember hearing that we were AAA personalities. Oh, you're a AAA personality. They had A's for us. You were AAA, a double A,
Mm,
and I don't know. It's just always who you've been, right? But
mm,
the reason why I found it very helpful when I was diagnosed was because I started understanding myself in ways that empowered me. And I think it's like, it was an interesting point that you just made, Antonio, but I remember it was something that I just thought I was broken. I didn't understand why everybody else got it right and I couldn't. And I remember one time when because a lot of people know that, yes, I have been an entrepreneur for so many years and I'm very focused on what I want to do. And I really believe that the billion people with lived experience with disability should come together and support each other because we are not a minority. We're not a minority if we come together. But it just was really interesting when I did understand that I was neurodiverse, because some people were saying things at the time, even when I was diagnosed. People were making comments like, "Oh, I'm so sick of these people that are talking about disabilities, but they don't have a disability. Look, now they're making up these disabilities so they can be. And it was like, so there was that too, that people thought you were, I don't know, lying about it. So it is, once again, as society is shifting and moving, and once again, as we're attacking people that have lived experiences with disabilities. Are you disabled enough? Or my daughter, I'll just say this one. My daughter with Down syndrome, there have been times when she wasn't included in disability parties or things because she wasn't disabled enough. And so I'm thinking it's so confusing, society. Just wanted to say that. Go ahead, Antonio.
No, because I have some friends who have autistic children, and they are in different levels of the spectrum. Some of them are independent, and while others, they will need support for life. And sometimes when we use the word autistic, it's almost like they are in the same room, But in reality, they are in two. There are two completely different people that are going to have completely different lives. And sometimes, we end up, we talk about autism, and we might talk about, this person has this kind of capacity and skills, but many people will need support for their lives in order to survive, basically.
I mean, exactly. And we have to really destigmatize this. I mean, my son is intellectually disabled. He is nearly 18 and he is cognitively about 4. So he will always need support. And he doesn't look disabled. And so this is often a challenge that it is not until somebody tries to speak with him that it is a reality. But I think that one of the things I just keep, like with Deborah, we are so strong in how we are speaking about things. I just had one of the worst traveling experiences this last year, traveling in France in the airports with my sunflower lanyard. And this is an international symbol for someone who has a hidden disability. Now, this can be anything from asthma to cancer to autism to Tourette's to any kind of menopause or any kind of hidden disability, right? And I wear this lanyard proudly and I wear it in the airports. And I remember I was so frustrated. I was in a smaller town and they have an international airport, and I had the lanyard and I said, "Do you mind if I board first? Because I have an anxiety disorder and it is easier for me if I can board first and get everything settled in." And the response was, "Well, where is your wheelchair?" And I said, "I don't have a wheelchair." And she said, "Well, you can't board the plane unless you have a wheelchair." And I said, "But I don't need a wheelchair." And I waited there. Then she called someone. They then arrived with a wheelchair and said that the only way I would be able to board early is if I got in the wheelchair. And I said, I just went on this, tirade. I don't speak French. It didn't matter. I got on the plane. And then when I arrived in Paris, which was my connecting place, I asked the same thing at Paris airport, big, big international airport. And the response was, "Where is your wheelchair?" And I said, "Oh, dear God, this is not happening in Paris." And so I said, "Have you also not been informed what the lanyard means?" But also, because it's accepted, the lanyard is accepted around the world. So this is for number one thing. Why adopt the lanyard in an airport if you're not going to educate your staff about it? First thing. Second of all, we have to understand invisible disabilities better, whether it's, anything. I'm not even going to list them. So I sent a very strongly worded letter to Air France and explained that this was the situation. And they said, "We apologize and we thank you so much for this. We are now going to have like some type of educational info session for the airport staff because nobody with an invisible disability should have to fight this hard." And I keep thinking every time I go through this, I'm strong enough to fight this. My son wouldn't be. Maybe other people's children wouldn't be. They themselves, neurodivergent women who have experienced stigma and shame their whole life about their disability, they wouldn't be strong enough to fight this. So that's why I fight so hard. That's why I don't stop talking. And because I think we are speaking for the millions who are not able to do this.
Billions.
Billions, actually.
Just is. Sorry, but it's the reality. It is billions. So, yeah.
So how important, considering the fact that we talking about late diagnosis, how we can involve younger women in this conversation? How can have this kind of a shared experience between Deborah, yourself, with younger women, for them to be more aware and somehow be more confident about themselves by talking with people like both of you?
Go ahead, Regina.
I just think that, I have a lot of opinions about social media, but one of the things I think it's really good for is to help younger people who are dealing with struggles, whether it's sexuality or neurodivergence. I think that social media is great for that. There are many platforms where there are strong people talking about this, ourselves included. So I think that that's one thing, is to just keep talking and keep destigmatizing. I think that's the main thing. Wherever I go, I talk about this. And, I don't need people to say, oh, I guess you can guess that I'm a bit ADHD. I'm really offended when I was at a conference a couple months ago and somebody started their speech or their lecture with, well, I want to say that I guess everyone is a bit ADHD. I calmly gathered my things and I left. And I went out to go take a breather and I talked to a professor who was there and I said, what do you think when people say this? And he said, well, it's like somebody saying everybody's a bit gay. It's a bit frustrating, isn't it? I said, it really is, right? Because you don't come to a university conference and say that everybody's a bit ADHD. So we have to stop this rhetoric. We have to stop saying that everybody's a bit of this or that. Oh, I'm a bit autistic today. We need to stop the phrases. We need to stop the jokes. And I think embracing what it is without, the stigma behind it. I'm on a soapbox here. Oh my God.
Well, but it's true. I want to, I know that we are out of time, but I have a colleague who is blind. Her name is Jasmine, and she lives in the Philippines and she just got engaged. So she's in New Zealand. On her flight out of the Philippines to New Zealand, she was actually stopped because she was a woman traveling alone and she was blind. And they said, you can't board the plane. Now, she had just gotten on another plane and flown there. And I believe this was in Manila. And they're like, no, you can't do it. You can't do it if you're blind. She fought and fought and fought them. She had to threaten them with legal action. Finally, they let her get on the plane. We shouldn't have to fight so hard. This woman is obviously blind. She doesn't need a wheelchair. Just the way people treat you is just really terrible. And so I think your work is very important and we really applaud it. When do you think you'll have some findings that you'll be sharing?
Yes.
Is it going to turn into a book? Is it going to be a book series? What are y'all thinking about as you gather this data?
That's a really good question. At the moment, we're aiming just to submit the paper before June, I think is the deadline. And we're hoping that this fantastic journal, it's the Entrepreneurship Region and Development Journal. We hope that they'll accept it. If they don't accept it, we will find a place for it. That's it. I mean, research that we do is never going to go, it's not going to go unused. That definitely not. Academia is like that now. We've both experienced, rejections, and you just have to keep going forward. I mean, there's different reasons for every rejection that I've received. It's never been about the content or the topic. It's always just about the fit for the journal. So I think we have to remember that again, like when we think about where we fit in the world, is that we just have to keep going forward. And I think also, for example, one small antidote. My husband, we're very open about talking about our son. And my husband is a scientist and he was at some kind of work function and there were people visiting from different countries. And he mentioned that he had to go because our intellectually disabled son needs us to be home by a certain time because he comes home with a taxi and he needs us there. And one of the men at the table got very quiet and he said, oh, you're talking about your son. And my husband said, yeah, he's part of our life. Why wouldn't I? And he kind of broke down at the table and said that he has an intellectually disabled child, but he doesn't feel like he can talk about her in work settings, in any setting. And he really thanked my husband for talking about our child in a way that was so natural, like you would talk about any other child. And I tell that story everywhere because I think, wow, to think this poor man has been having to hide his child's identity because of the fear of how other people would see him or see his child, that we need to stop. That we need to be.
We are still doing that. I have a good friend that I will not tell her name who is a senior manager. And she has a son with Down syndrome. And she met me and heard how I talked and and she was like, Deborah, I was embarrassed I'm not embarrassed of my son, but I don't want people to decide that he's not good enough.
Mm.
So she said, I never had a family portrait on my desk. She said,
Oh my
after I heard
gosh.
you talk, I proudly put it on my desk. And she said, my coworkers were so supportive. So people, it is a shame that we do that we make people not
Yeah.
feel that they can talk about their brilliant, amazing children, no matter how they facilitate it. My daughter
Yeah.
isn't broken because she has Down syndrome. She's not. She just happens to have Down syndrome, and also she has autism as well. She's on the spectrum, which is
Mm.
not uncommon with Down syndrome. But I think the work is very, very important. And I want to say to you, Regina, if for some reason they do not accept the paper, please, the research, come to me. I promise you, I can find journals that would love to do it. And I know
Thank
Billion
you.
Strong would love to publish it. So,
Thank
as
you.
you said, you focus on the research, you get the data. And if for some reason somebody's going to be silly on the other end, we'll help you. We'll help make
Thank
sure that
you.
out. So, but in the meantime, Regina, I will first of all, let me thank Amazon for keeping us on the air. We are so blessed by them and thankful for them. And also, Regina, do you mind letting the audience know how they can follow you? I mean, how they could find out about the work and track what you're doing. And also, I'm hoping whenever it does publish that you'll come back on and talk about it so that
Oh,
the
yes.
knows how to get it and everything. So, but let me give you
Yes.
the last words.
Yes, thank you so much, both of you, for having me. I think it's so important. I love to speak about my work. I think this is really important. Like you said, there's nothing for us to be ashamed of about us or our children. I'm going to keep advocating about this until my last breath. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not sure. I'll give you the link. I'll give you guys the link so you can find me. That's the easiest way to do it. I know that my work email, the school email, has quite a bit of filter, so I don't want to give the email address because I might not even get the emails.
And you'll
I
get
just
spam.
realized it
Please,
didn't.
please don't say your email
Yeah.
or your phone number.
No.
You can
So
give it to
yeah,
LinkedIn,
I'll give the
but
LinkedIn. Yeah, that's easier.
we are a lot of people watch the show, so we would prefer you not
Yeah.
doing
No,
that.
that's perfect. No, and definitely I will come to you and we'll talk about the paper when it gets published. It will be published. That's how I see it. It will be. Just don't know when,
Oh,
but
it
it
will
will
be.
be.
It will be
Yeah.
published. It'll just be interesting to see where it is published. But I know Billion
Me,
Strong
I know, right?
on publishing
Yeah.
it. If the first one doesn't come through, come to me and I will make
I
sure that
will.
it is published. So, all right, Regina, thank you so much for the work
Thank
you're doing.
you.
It's such an important conversation. It's sort of a shame that we're still having these conversations, but we obviously need to.
Yeah.
And we need to do it. We need to look at the lenses also from females because often research is only done on men. And we see this over and over and over and over
Yeah.
again. There are women in the world. We're
Yeah.
also not minorities. We are, yeah, but but yes. But thank you, Regina. Thanks again to
Thank
Amazon,
you.
Antonio, and Neil. And we'll see everyone later.
Thank you. Bye.